Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Yosua with student number 10. Here, I want to make a debate video as both government and opposition side. The motion that I have chosen is the this whole world reject the TNI law in Indonesia due to a threat to civilians. Thank you. Honorable adjudicator, respected opponent, and fellow student, we are here today to debate a critical issue concerning Indonesia's defense framework. The motion before us for the rejection of the TNI law due to alleged threat to civilians. While concerns regarding civilian safety are undoubtedly valid, we argue that outright rejection is not the solution. We believe a more constructive approach lies in targeted amendment and robust oversight, ensuring the law serves its intended purpose of national defense without compromising the right and well-being of Indonesian citizens. Building upon our commitment to both national security and civilian well-being, we propose that the path forward is not through outright rejection of the TNE law, but through a process of targeted amendment and the implementation of robust oversight mechanism. Rejection is a destructive, non-constructive approach. Rejection the entire TNE law is akin to dismantling a house because of leaky roof. It's true away the entire structure, including the parts that are shown and essential. This would create a legal vacuum, potentially weakening the TNE's ability to perform its duty effectively and ultimately harming Indonesia's national security. Instead of demolition, we should focus on repair and renovation, identifying the specific areas of concern and addressing them directly through amendment. Consider this law. The TNI law likely contains provision for training standard, operational guidelines, and internal disciplinary procedure. Rejecting the entire law would discard these vital components, potentially leading to a less professional and less accountable military force. How does a weaker, less regulated TNE better protect civilians? It doesn't. The beauty of targeted amendment is that they allow us to address specific concerns without sacrificing the overall benefit of the TNE law. If the concern is about the TNE's role in internal security, let's amend the law to clarify the boundaries of that role, ensuring it is exercised only the exceptional circumstance and under strict civilian control. If the concern is about accountability, let's strengthen the provision for independent investigation and judicial review of the NE action. Robust oversight is key to preventing abuse, but amendments alone are not enough. We must also implement robust oversight mechanisms to ensure that the TNE law is implemented in a way that respects human rights and protects civilian liberties. This includes strengthening parliamentary oversight committees, empowering civil society organizations to monitor TNE activists, and ensuring that the judiciary has the resources and independence to hold TNE personnel accountable for any wrongdoing. Oversight is not about distrusting the TNE, it's about ensuring accountability and preventing the potential for abuse of power. A strong system of check and balance is essential for any democratic society, and it's particularly important when dealing with the military, which possess significant power and authority. Our opponent may argue that amendments are too slow or that the government cannot be trusted to implement them effectively. To this, we say that inaction is no option. We recognize the urgency of addressing this concern, and we are committed to working with all stakeholders to ensure that the amendment process is swift, transparent, and effective. We also acknowledge the need for strong oversight mechanism to hold the government accountable for the implementing the amendment in good faith. In conclusion, we firmly believe that the targeted amendment and robust oversight are more constructive and effective solution than outright rejection of the TNI law. This approach allows us to address specific concern about civilian safety without sacrificing the essential function of the TNI and undermining Indonesian national security. We urge the adjudicator to reject the motion and support the path forward that prioritizes both security and liberty. The government side will likely argue that targeted amendment and robust oversight can mitigate the threat posed by the TNE law. We, the opposition, firmly disagree. While we acknowledge the intention might be good, we believe that this approach is fundamentally flawed and ultimately inadequate to protect Indonesian civilians. We argue that the inherent dangers within the TNE law are too deeply ingrained to be remedied by mere tinkering around the edge. The problem is not just a few bad clauses or a lack of oversight. The core issue is the nature of the power granted to the TNE in this law. It is a fundamental imbalance that shifts too much authority away from civilian control and places it in the hand of the military. Amendment can only adjust so much. It can change the fundamental core of this law. We should just amendment and oversight is just like patching up a dam that is already cracked. The cracks still remain and it still has the potential to break one day and the damage would be more severe. Trying to fix this with amendment is like trying to turn a lion into a house cat by clipping its claws and putting it on a leash. It might seem severe, but it's still a lion. The inherent potential for danger remains that, and the temptation to revert to its true nature will always be there. The problem is not the tools of the power, but the nature of its power. Therefore, we should remove the law. The history of this nation demonstrates that amendments are often watered down in the legislative process, and the robust oversight promises by the government often fails to materialize. By the time any meaningful changes are made, the damage could already be done. The threat to civilian liberties is immediate, and we cannot afford to wait for a protracted and uncurtailed amendment process. By the time it has been passed and the people is already suffering, even if strong amendments are passed, they can be easily undone by future government or circumvented through legal loopholes. The power granted to the TNE in this law creates a permanent temptation for abuse, and relying on the goodwill of future administration is a gamble we cannot afford to take. The safety and freedom of our citizens. Moreover, the civil is always on the weaker spot when it comes to military. No matter how robust the oversight mechanisms are, they will always be reactive rather than preventative. Oversight can only punish abuse after they have occurred. It cannot stop them from happening in the first place. The very presence of this law creates a climate of fear and intimidation, chilling freedom of expression and undermining democratic participation. The example of why oversight is vile is information asymmetry. Military often have access to information the civilians do not, making effective oversight difficult. Then lack of resources. Oversight body bodies are often underfunded and understaffed, limiting their ability to effectively monitor TNI activities. Political influence. The military wields significant political influence, which can undermine the independence and effectiveness of oversight bodies. The government side will likely argue that rejecting the TNI law would weaken national security. To this, we say that the true national security is not achieved at the expense of civilian liberties. A nation that sacrifices the right of its own people in the name of security is not a strong nation but a tyrannical one. Moreover, a military that operates outside the bounds of the law ultimately undermines its own legitimacy and effectiveness. In conclusion, we maintain that targeted amendment and robust oversight are a dangerous illusion. They offer the appearance of addressing the problem without tackling the fundamental flaws of this TNI law. The risks to civilian liberties are too great, the potential for abuse too real. We argue that adjudicators to stand on the side of the people and reject this law. Only by rejecting the TNI law can we truly safeguard the right and freedom of Indonesian citizens.